the WNBA seemed least prepared for it. Despite record-breaking college viewership and surging fan interest, the league met her professional debut with cold shoulders and unclear intentions. The missed merchandising windows, the lack of promotional investment, and an alarming level of physical aggression from opponents, all without meaningful league intervention, painted a bleak picture. Even at her performance peaks, Clark was often denied the central role she'd earned, left out of key offensive decisions and post-game narratives. It wasn't just neglect, it was structural resistance to change. Now the narrative is splitting in two directions. Clark is still surging forward, building her own legacy with a marketing machine independent of league support. But the WNBA faces a reckoning, one that demands a serious reassessment of how it treats its most visible assets.
If you're here for the real story and not the filtered version, subscribe. And if you're sticking around for the next meltdown, you better definitely subscribe.
The league's inability to harness Clark's value may not just cost them market share. It could erase the momentum women's basketball spent decades building. Caitlin Clark was supposed to be the breakout story that redefined women's basketball. She had the numbers, the fans, the media momentum, everything. She came into the WNBA as the most recognizable name the league had seen in decades. Her NCAA run wasn't just viral, it was record-breaking. She had the power to bring women's basketball into living rooms that had never cared before. But somehow, the WNBA didn't just fail to capitalize, they actively got in the way. The moment Clark crossed over into the pros, something shifted. Networks like ESPN and Fox, outlets that had just spent months hyping her up, started pulling back. Not just slowing down the coverage, but going silent in places where the buzz should have been deafening. There was no flood of game highlights, no extended interviews, no big sponsorship rollouts coordinated with the league. And when the viewership dropped, the merch didn't move, and fan interest started to taper off, the league had no answers. Because what was happening behind the scenes had already set the tone. According to multiple reports, including that leaked info involving ESPN, this wasn't just oversight. It was strategy. The WNBA and its partners allegedly made deliberate decisions to cool down the Caitlin Clark effect, to pull her out of the spotlight she earned, to protect existing interests. In other words, they feared she was too big, too fast, too disruptive. That's not just a miscalculation. That's sabotage. Caitlin Clark didn't just bring attention. She brought a shift. And the league flinched. From the moment she stepped on the court, she wasn't protected. She wasn't promoted. She wasn't even positioned as the centerpiece of her own team. She was physically targeted in games, aggressive fouls, hard hits, and the WNBA didn't respond. There were no statements from officials, no meaningful support. The silence said it all. Clark's role in the league was minimized from the jump. Instead of being built around, she was benched in key plays. Games where fans tuned in just to watch her. She was barely visible in the final minutes. Coaches didn't prioritize her. The league didn't market her. And the narrative shifted before it even got a chance to flourish. Meanwhile, the fan experience was fractured. Fans eager to buy her jersey were met with delays. The league's merch site lacked inventory, lacked visibility, and in some cases, lacked Clark's name entirely. People ready to throw money at the brand were forced to go around the WNBA just to support her. That's not a missed opportunity. It's a massive failure in brand execution. AB speaks, and what made it worse? The internal attitude. Aaliyah Boston, her own teammate, downplayed Clark's impact publicly. Subtle shade, offhand comments. Stuff that made headlines not because they were scandalous, but because they confirmed what fans already suspected. The resentment was real. The vibe inside the locker rooms wasn't unity. It was resistance. Clark wasn't welcomed as a rising tide. She was treated like a wave that might drown the status quo. And that's where the league lost control of its own momentum. Because while it tried to suppress the Clark narrative, her brand was already working around the clock. The launch of Caitlin's Court wasn't just a PR move. It was a direct challenge. It was Clark and her team saying, if you won't tell the story, we will. Pop-up events, fan-driven engagement, and marketing that felt personal. She bypassed the league entirely and still found, because the truth is, Clark doesn't need the WNBA to stay relevant. But the WNBA desperately needs her. They're not sitting on a good player. They're sitting on a phenomenon. And they're acting like it's a threat to manage instead of a gift to elevate. That fear of imbalance, of giving one player too much attention, is holding the entire league back. And the numbers prove it. Since the start of her rookie season, the league's failed promotion has led to declining viewership, lower engagement, and a fan base that feels more confused than excited. Clark was supposed to be the spark. Instead, she's stuck navigating a system that's afraid of her own light. Sad, and all of this leads to the question, why? Why is a league starving for relevance, pushing away the one player who actually delivers it? The answer is not simple, but it is clear. Internal politics, legacy players, a system that wasn't designed to handle this kind of attention. There's a fear that Clark becoming the face of the WNBA would create division, alienate veterans, and rewrite the internal hierarchy. But here's the truth. Every great sport needs a disruptor. Someone who changes how the game is seen, talked about, and consumed. And for women's basketball, that's Caitlin Clark. What we're watching now is a league at a crossroads. Do they continue the self-sabotaging pattern? Do they keep sidelining her in critical plays, ignoring merchandising demand, and underpromoting her presence on major broadcasts? Or do they finally lean in, recognize what she brings to the table, and build a better system that can actually handle a star? Because make no mistake, Clark's not going anywhere. Her brand is only growing. The longer the league waits to get behind her, the more it risks getting left behind entirely. Fans aren't going to stick around if the star they came for is being dimmed. They're already asking the hard questions. Why is she getting benched? Why are there so few highlight reels? Why does it seem like she's fighting both the opponent and the league? They're not getting answers, and they're not going to wait forever. Sad, Clark, on the other hand, is playing the long game. Year 3 is being whispered about like a redemption arc. And if the league still doesn't get it by then, she has the platform to take her fans with her wherever she goes. Because she's not tied to a league that doesn't want to support her. She's tied to the people watching, the people buying the merch, clicking the videos, and showing up, even when the league won't. The WNBA has one last shot to fix the optics, fix the narrative, and fix the internal dysfunction. That means addressing the hostility. It means listening to the fans. It means elevating the talent that brings in new eyes without trying to dilute their impact. Because if Caitlin Clark walks, figuratively or literally, it won't just be her the league loses. It'll be everyone who followed her in. This isn't about one player being treated unfairly. It's about a league choosing fear over growth, choosing status quo over innovation. And in sports, that choice always ends the same way: irrelevance. So what now? It's up to the WNBA to stop hiding behind excuses and step into the reality they created. If they want to survive, let alone thrive, they need to back their biggest star with real action. Not just tweets, not just sound bites. Strategy, exposure, merch, minutes, protection. Caitlin Clark showed the world what women's basketball could be. The question is whether the league will let it happen. If you're watching this shaking your head, if you've been wondering why the WNBA seems to be working against its own best interest, let us know what you think in the comments. Share this with someone who's been asking the same questions. Hit that like button if you're tired of the missed opportunities. And subscribe if you're sticking around to see what happens next, because the future of the league might just depend on whether it finally steps up. And if not, then Caitlin Clark won't be the one who fumbled the moment. The WNBA will. Caitlin Clark didn't just walk into the WNBA, she stormed into it. Every camera, every mic, every fan with a ticket in hand was watching. And not casually. This wasn't "we'll see how she does." This was the moment. The moment the WNBA could have finally stepped into mainstream sports culture with the kind of buzz leagues dream about. She brought it all: eyeballs, engagement, energy, and somehow the league said, "Not yet." That's not just mismanagement. That's a spectacular collapse of vision. From the moment Clark was drafted, it was obvious the league wasn't ready. The rollout? Lukewarm. The marketing? Sporadic at best. The merch? Embarrassing. Jerseys sold out before the season started, and instead of ramping up supply, the league let the window close. Fans were begging to give them money, and they fumbled it. This wasn't a minor logistics issue. This was a full-blown failure to meet demand during historic rookie season. And still, Clark kept showing up, playing through it, taking hits, literally and figuratively, and trying to prove she belonged in a league that treated her like an outsider. On the court, she faced relentless physicality. Refs swallowed whistles. Opponents didn't hold back. And there was no clear statement from the league addressing what was obvious to anyone watching. Caitlin Clark was being targeted. She was being challenged in ways that crossed the line from competitive to personal. This wasn't welcome to the pros. It was, we're going to make sure you don't shine too brightly. See, and then came the ESPN leak. That quiet feeling fans had, that the media retreat wasn't just laziness, but strategy, confirmed. Internal discussions pointed to a decision to pull back on Clark coverage to protect equity among players. As in, she was getting too big, too fast. And instead of riding the wave, the league decided to put a cap on it. Let that sink in. A league fighting for relevance got the biggest spotlight it had ever seen, and it turned it down, because Clark's stardom threatened the balance. Her instant popularity exposed that the WNBA wasn't set up to handle a transcendent figure. And instead of adapting, it panicked. There's a term for this: organizational self-sabotage. The signs were everywhere. Game plans that benched her in clutch moments. Teams that clearly didn't build around her skill set. Media. Appearances that were quietly canceled or never scheduled in the first place. Teammates making passive-aggressive comments to the press. And a league office that refused to put its foot down and say, we're standing behind our star. Because that's what she is. A star. Whether the league embraces it or not, the public already has. Clark's brand is growing because she's doing what the league refuses to: lean into the spotlight. Her team launched Caitlin's Court as a direct answer to being shut out. They didn't wait for a campaign. They made one. They created a brand space that reached fans directly. Personal, targeted, smart. And it worked, because her popularity never actually dipped. It just moved outside the WNBA's grasp. Sad, and this is where things get dangerous. When your star can exist and thrive, without your support, you're no longer leading. You're chasing. And right now, the WNBA is chasing a moment it already had and let slip through its fingers. This is about more than one player. It's about the ecosystem. Because Clark isn't a fluke. She's the blueprint. And the league's failure to capitalize sends a loud message to every future star watching. You're on your own. That's not just disappointing, it's catastrophic. Let's be honest. The league is small. It's still fighting for space in a crowded sports world. Every single opportunity to gain traction matters. Every new fan, every new headline, every highlight clip that goes viral, it's fuel. And the Caitlin Clark effect was jet fuel. It had the power to launch women's basketball into the mainstream with undeniable momentum. And the league threw a wet blanket on it, because they were afraid of what happens when one player changes the game. Caitlin Clark. Here's the irony. That's how all leagues grow. The NBA didn't suppress Jordan to make room for role players. Serena wasn't sidelined, so doubles matches could get more attention. You don't grow a league by flattening its stars. You grow it by letting them shine. And yet, Clark was handled like a threat to parity, not a gift to the game. Every sideline moment where she wasn't part of the action. Every interview that focused on how she needs to adjust rather than what she brings. Every game where she's on the floor and the story still isn't about her. That's not balance. That's a conscious choice to rewrite the narrative before it fully takes hold. But here's the part they're missing. Fans see it. They feel the pushback. And they're not buying the excuses anymore. Caitlin Clark, these aren't niche basketball obsessives. These are everyday people who saw something exciting in Clark, who got invested, who made her part of their sports diet. And the league's weird, cagey behavior is driving them away. They didn't show up for some vague mission statement. They showed up for Caitlin Clark. And if she walks, they do too. She's been patient. focused, resilient. But she's also smart. She knows what's happening. She knows the doors are being closed quietly behind the scenes. And she knows that if the league keeps resisting her rise, she doesn't have to wait for them. She can keep building outside the system. Keep doing it her way. Through partnerships, through direct marketing, through media platforms that don't answer to the WNBA. And the minute her reach outgrows the league's, what's left? Sad. A league that bet against its best chance at growth. And if you think this is just temporary drama, look at the bigger trend. Players speaking out, resentment brewing, team dynamics under strain. A league scrambling to control optics instead of building real infrastructure to support a star-driven ecosystem. The warning signs are all there. This isn't just about Clark being underused. It's about an institution that refuses to evolve. The question now isn't, can Clark make it work? She already has. The question is, will the WNBA finally wake up? Because the window is closing. Sad. If year 3 hits and nothing changes, if Clark is still being pushed to the background, if the merch situation is still a mess, if coverage is still filtered through this bizarre lens of protecting the balance, it's over. Not for Clark, for the league. Because no one is sticking around to watch a league silence its most exciting player. And when we look back at this moment, the story won't be that Caitlin Clark didn't live up to the hype. It'll be that she did, and the WNBA didn't. She proved it on the court. She proved it in the numbers. She proved it in the culture shift that happened the moment her name hit a roster. But the league wasn't ready. And unless they start making moves now, they'll be left behind. Press conference. So here's where we are. A star who changed everything, fighting a system that still wants things to stay the same. A fan base that showed up only to be ignored. And a league that needs to decide if it's going to keep playing defense or finally go all in. Because Clark didn't fumble anything. She showed up. She delivered. She was the moment. The WNBA just didn't know what to do with it. Let's not sugarcoat it. Caitlin Clark did everything right. She brought millions of new eyes to women's basketball. She didn't wait for a system to validate her. She earned it with her performance, with her poise, with her draw. And instead of being met with open arms, she ran headfirst into a wall built by the very league that was supposed to support her. And the craziest part? The wall didn't go up overnight. It was being built brick by brick, through years of fragile egos, protective culture, and fear of change. Clark didn't cause the dysfunction. She just exposed it. The moment she entered the WNBA, the existing cracks in the system split wide open. Because Clark didn't just come with talent. She came with momentum. That's what scared them. The WNBA, despite all its talk about growth and visibility, had no roadmap for what to do when someone actually delivered that. And so instead of embracing her impact, they tried to manage it. Water it down. Disperse it. Anything but center it. That's why you didn't see her face on every billboard. That's why her highlights weren't dominating social feeds the way they should have. That's why the narrative around her suddenly shifted from game changer to rookie who still has to prove herself. It was the league's way of saying, we'll take your but not on your terms. And what did that get them? Declining viewership, sluggish merch sales, disappointed fans who came for something exciting and got something deliberately muted. Because the WNBA didn't want a star, they wanted a spokesperson, a symbol they could control. But Clark wasn't that. She was the story, not a footnote. And instead of rewriting the playbook around her, they kept trying to fit her into an old one. AB speaks. That's why she was sidelined in big moments. Why she wasn't being used in key plays. Why she looked more like a role player than the breakout phenomenon she actually was. And let's be clear, that wasn't basketball strategy. That was politics. And when it wasn't politics, it was passive aggression. Aaliyah Boston's public comments weren't just shade. They were signals. Signals that there was resentment brewing. That Clark's rapid rise was seen as something unearned. That the locker room wasn't unified. And what did the league do? Nothing. They let it fester. They watched as their golden opportunity morphed into an uncomfortable power struggle, where one of their most bankable athletes was being treated like a PR problem instead of a brand asset. And that leads us here to a star with a fractured league around her and a fan base that's beginning to lose patience. Because it's not just about Clark anymore. It's about what she represents. She's the test case. The one who proved women's basketball can be a mass market product if it's handled correctly. And the WNBA failed that test. They had one job: don't get in the way. Let her shine. Build around her. Protect her. Market her. Let her lift the league. But instead, they got territorial. They tried to clip her wings before she could take flight. And yet, here she is, still standing, still growing, still finding ways to connect with fans through her own channels, her own vision, her own campaign. Caitlin's court isn't just a marketing plan. It's a survival tactic, a way to take back the narrative and say, if you won't support me, I'll support myself. That's what resilience looks like. And let's be honest, she shouldn't have to do it alone. But if that's what it takes, she will. And that's exactly why she's going to win. Because the truth is, the WNBA can't stop her. They could try to sideline her, undersell her, undervalue her, but they can't make people unsee what she's already shown. They can't erase the impact. They can't fake the numbers. They can't pretend that interest wasn't there when they chose to let it wither. What they can do is change. It's not too late. The league can still wake up. They can course correct. They can stop pretending that the answer to growth is dilution. They can stop punishing and start celebrating it. But that requires honesty and action and a leadership team willing to admit that their current strategy, if you can even call it that, isn't working. Because this isn't just a story of lost momentum. It's a warning. Caitlin Clark. Caitlin Clark won't be the last phenom. There will be others. And how the WNBA handles her will define how future stars approach the league. Will they see it as a place that supports greatness or a place that fears it? Right now, the answer isn't flattering, but it could be. If they want to stay relevant, if they want to grow, they need to build a league that can handle stars, that doesn't just tolerate disruption, but thrives on it. Because Caitlin Clark isn't going to shrink to fit into their old model. And she shouldn't have to. So if you've been watching this unfold, frustrated by how badly this has been handled, say something. Drop a comment. Let your voice be part of the shift. Hit like if you're rooting for Clark to get the platform she earned. Share this with someone who still believes this league can turn it around. And hit subscribe, because one way or another, this story is going to define the next era of women's basketball, whether the WNBA is ready or not.